In Colombia, a report revealed that the 2022 legislative pre-election period had violent political and community leaders. Over 1 million refugees from the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics have crossed into Russia since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine. Israeli forces attacked and beat mourners attending the funeral procession of veteran Palestinian journalist Abu Akleh, who was killed by the regime's troops in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin. From the Telsur studios in Havana, we begin with the news. In Colombia, a report prepared by the Electoral Observation Mission states that the pre-electoral period for the 2021 to 2022 legislative elections was the most violent in the last 12 years. The head of the Electoral Observation Mission for Colombia, Alejandra Barrios, said the study showed an increase in violence against leaders in a context of conflict reconfiguration, marked by the consolidation of multiple illegal armed groups in rural areas. Between 2020 to 2021, violence by these groups increased by 90%. The report stated that the most troubling scenario is taking place less than a month before the presidential elections, when the drug cartel known as the Gulf Clan started another armed strike that affected at least 98 municipalities in 11 departments of the country. In Colombia, a motorcycle bomb explosion affected more than 35 homes on Thursday night in the town of Caloto in the department of Cauca. Residents of Caloto told local media that the explosion occurred around 8:20 p.m. local time on a bridge at the entrance of the municipality and that the blast affected nearby houses. So far, only one young girl is reported to have been taken to the hospital with hearing damage. Authorities began the investigation to identify the perpetrators of this attack. Thursday night's explosion follows the one that took place last May 2nd when the mayor's office of the municipality of Argelia, also in the Cauca department, was practically destroyed by a car bomb. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, together with the Secretary General of the Organization of Oil Exporting Countries, OPEC, Mohamed Barkindo, agreed to strengthen the ties of brotherhood and cooperation between both parties. From the Miraflores Palace in Caracas, OPEC Secretary Barkindo highlighted Venezuela's leadership and its perseverance in keeping OPEC active. The Venezuelan president said that OPEC member countries must remain united, fiercely disciplined, regulating the oil market in accordance with the needs of humanity. On his part, OPEC Secretary General noted the excellent condition of Venezuela's oil plants in spite of the sanctions of the U.S. blockade.
I would like to take this opportunity to respectfully call the leaders to respect the basic principles of OPEC. First, that oil can never be or must be politicized. That oil must be depoliticized. Oil cannot be used as a weapon of policy or sanction.
In the context, President Nicolás Maduro agreed with the Secretary General of OPEC in the rejection of the use of energy resources as a weapon of manipulation to settle disputes of any kind between nations.
We had a hard blow, a hard fall, the persecution of oil. Marquinhos saying, and we share oil, gas. The main energy companies in the world must get out of any political dispute, any geopolitical dispute, any ideological dispute, of any kind of sanctions. We are already seeing the so-called sanctions against Russia, oil and gas, and the boomerang effect on the economy and quality of life of the United States, Europe, and the world.
Thousands of Argentinians brought central Buenos Aires to a standstill in another massive protest against the South American country's soaring inflation and the government's debt renegotiations with the International Monetary Fund. The Federal March for Work and Salaries and Against Hunger and Poverty was bolstered by thousands of people arriving from outside the capital, heeding the call from multiple unions and left-wing groups. Calls to protest have become more frequent since the start of the year, as the country's economy shows no signs of stemming its inflationary trend. According to figures published Thursday, in the first 4 months of 2022, prices rose 23%, including a 6% jump in April. Demonstrators also protested at the government's budgetary restraint, a necessity during debt renegotiations with the International Monetary Fund, which will see the country reduce its annual deficit from 3% of gross domestic product in 2021 to 0 by 2025.
Today we protest here. It is a very massive demonstration. People are coming from all over the country, from different places, and we are standing here in the street to demand an end to the poverty and hunger that we are experiencing.
We find on a daily basis that our own colleagues have not been able to buy a kilo of meat. They cannot buy milk. They cannot buy bread for some time now. Things that are essential to be able to live and to be able to raise their children. So, we believe that the state has to generate genuine work, and that is why we are here in the street today.
Chilean carabineros repressed a peaceful march organized by several journalism schools in the country to honor journalist Francisca Sandoval, who died from injuries she sustained in a shooting while covering a protest on May 1st. Dozens of journalists, friends and relatives went to Plaza de la Dignidad to pay their respects. However, police officers repressed the peaceful demonstration with fire hydrants. On May 1st, gunmen opened fire during a Workers' Day demonstration in the Barrio Meigs area of Santiago, the capital, as well as during looting that followed the demonstration, injuring at least 3 members of the press, including Sandoval. She was covering the demonstration for the local broadcaster Canal Señal 3 La Victoria and was shot in the face. The journalist remained in critical condition at the Posta Central Hospital in Santiago until her death. Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Keith Rowley called on Thursday for an inclusive summit of the Americas without excluding any country of the region. The Prime Minister also affirmed that CARICOM members will soon adopt a joint resolution. At a press conference, the Prime Minister said that the Americas go from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, that all countries included in that geography are American, and that therefore the 9th summit scheduled for next June in the U.S. city of Los Angeles should not be exclusive. The Premier added that the host country should not get to choose who participates in the summit and who is left out of it based on different styles of governance, referring to the White House's intention to exclude Venezuela, Nicaragua and Cuba from the event.
We have a summit of the Americas. Our position is that it should be all-inclusive. It shouldn't be exclusive where you pick and choose who comes to the summit, because the Americas are all of us. Even though we may have different styles of government or our circumstances may be different, it is the inclusivity that would give us the ability to work with one another and help each other. That position is not shared by all, right? And we are currently trying to see how many persons we can get on board with that the Americas mean all the countries in the Americas.
We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi and welcome back to From the South. Since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, more than 1 million refugees from the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics have crossed into Russia. An emergency services official told Sputnik that since the escalation of the conflict, more than 1.2 million Ukrainian refugees have fled from the Donbas region across the border into the Russian Rostov region. Among the displaced, there are 218,000 minors. In 53 regions of Russia, 531 temporary accommodation points have already been set up, 65 of them in the Rostov region. The large-scale evacuation of the civilian population from the Donbass self-proclaimed republics began mid-February because of the worsening situation on the ground. On that topic, more than 500 people were evacuated from the Ukrainian city of Mariupol to the Donetsk People's Republic on Thursday. The Donetsk authorities reported that over the past 24 hours, 509 people, including 36 minors, were evacuated from Mariupol to the town of Bezymenoe in the Novoazov district. The evacuees were taken to an assistance center set up by the Ministry of Emergencies. Last February 24th, Russia launched a special military operation in Ukraine, claiming that the self-proclaimed People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, previously acknowledged by Moscow as sovereign states, needed help in the face of the genocide committed by Kiev. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said he doubts the motives of Ukraine's intention of joining the European Union while accusing Brussels of ambitions beyond the European continent.
has turned from a constructive economic platform as it was created into an aggressive militant player who is already declaring its ambitions far beyond the European continent. They are rushing to follow in the tracks already laid by NATO, thereby confirming the trend that they are merging with the North Atlantic Alliance and will in fact serve as its appendage.
The group of 7 foreign ministers are meeting until Saturday in the northern German city of Bengals, where they are discussing together with the Ukrainian and Moldovan counterparts their response to the war in Ukraine. British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said it is very important at this time that we keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin by supplying more arms to Ukraine and by increasing sanctions. The war in Ukraine will be at the top of the agenda, with the foreign ministers of Ukraine and Moldova, Dmitry Kuleba and Nicu Popescu, respectively, invited to the event. The foreign affairs ministers will also be discussing the impact of sanctions on the prices of food and energy. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said his country does not have a positive opinion on Finland and Sweden joining the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and accused Scandinavian countries of harboring outlawed Kurdish militants.
We are currently following the developments in Sweden and Finland, but we do not have a positive opinion on this because they made a mistake with NATO with Greece before, the administrations before us, and you know the attitude that Greece took against Turkey by taking NATO behind it. We, as Turkey, do not want to make a second mistake on this issue. Moreover, Scandinavian countries are unfortunately almost like guest houses for terrorist organizations. PKK, the HKPC, are nested in Sweden, in the Netherlands.
The Greek parliament on Thursday approved the increased U.S. military presence in the country. Greek lawmakers on Thursday overwhelmingly approved a bill to ratify the second protocol amending the Defense Cooperation Agreement with the United States. The Mutual Defense Cooperation Agreement, first signed in 1990, allows U.S. troops to train and operate in Greece. The latest amendment, agreed upon in 2021, expands cooperation by allowing the presence of U.S. troops in another 4 military areas, including 2 army camps in central and northern Greece, as well as a naval base on the island of Crete. Thousands of anti-abortion demonstrators descended on Parliament Hill in Canada as a leaked United States Supreme Court draft decision brings renewed attention to the issue on both sides of the border. Protesters waved placards that read "Pray to End Abortion," egged on by organizers on megaphones. Meanwhile, counter-demonstrators carried placards reading "Abortion is healthcare" and "Keep your laws off my body." The Liberals promised last fall to bring in new regulations solidifying abortion access as a requirement for federal funding under the Canada Health Act. But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last week raised the specter of enshrining abortion rights in legislation instead. The landmark Roe v. Wade 1973 ruling in the United States guaranteed abortion access across the country. In Canada, a 1988 top court ruling struck down restrictions on abortions.
It is an enormous betrayal on every possible level of every woman, not just in the U.S., but worldwide, because the U.S. has a lot of influence on worldwide access to abortion.
I ask in the name of Jesus that each of us will make sacrifice for the unborn babies, that we will allow life to live in the name of Jesus. We thank you.
The United Nations stated on Friday that severe drought and delayed rains in the Horn of Africa have caused a humanitarian disaster. Delayed rains are exacerbating extreme drought in Kenya's northern region of Turkana, leaving many villagers there weakened and have starved. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, over 15 million people are experiencing severe water shortages and acute food insecurity in Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia. The office also said these numbers are expected to increase to 20 million, considering the lack of sufficient rainfall in the region. It reported about 5.7 million children are acutely malnourished across these countries, and over 3 million livestock have succumbed to the effects of the drought.
elsewhere, and we know that. And the world's misery has not left Turkana, and the world's rains have not come to Turkana. And we've seen 4 successive failures of the rains. We fear a 5th. And the result is, these families who've been kind enough to talk to us today have nothing left. They have no animals. They try to get food by making brooms that can't sell. The only food available for their children is sometimes from the schools. But to send a child to the school, you have to go 6 kilometers to get water, so the child can take water to the school. Loma Pust deserves our attention, but more important than that, we must give these people choices beyond smashing this fruit, as we see behind us, for the children to have the slightest possibility to survive to the next day. This is wrong. It's as simple as that. So that's why we're here.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. Thousands of Muslim and Christian Palestinians from Jerusalem, Al-Quds, and from across the occupied territories, including many colleagues and fellow journalists, paid their respects to veteran Al Jazeera journalist Shirin Abu Akleh. On Friday afternoon, Abu Akleh's body arrived at the Roman Catholic Church, where prayers were held for her soul before it was transferred to the cemetery, where she was buried next to her parents. The churches of Al-Quds rang their bells in conjunction with the funeral amid heavy presence of the occupation police and military roadblocks in the roads leading to the cemetery. Abu Akleh was highly regarded by viewers across the Muslim world, particularly in Palestine, where she was at the forefront of covering Israeli crimes and the occupation for more than 2 decades. Earlier on, ahead of the church service for Abu Akleh, dozens of mourners tried to march with the casket on foot out of a hospital near the old city. However, they were met with violence by Israeli police. The Israeli forces hit mourners holding the casket with batons, almost causing it to drop before eventually allowing it to be moved in a hearse. Al Jazeera report that Israeli forces arrested at least 4 mourners during the procession, including at least 2 for raising the Palestinian flag in occupied Al-Quds. Occupation forces threw a flash bomb and used tear gas against the crowd. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas said that he would take Abu Akleh's case to the International Criminal Court in an effort to obtain justice for the veteran reporter and her loved ones. On Friday, hundreds of Filipinos demonstrated in the streets of Manila to denounce irregularities in the presidential elections and the return to power of the Marcos dynasty. Amidst heavy police presence, the demonstrators denounced electoral fraud and accused the Marcos family of manipulating public opinion with an intense campaign of disinformation. This is the first protest against the dynasty since Ferdinand Marcos Jr., known as Bongbong, swept the presidential elections on Monday with more than 50% of the vote, according to preliminary results. The protest was led by human rights groups, martial law victims, students, LGBTQI groups, among others.
A lot of election irregularities, a lot of anomalies, a lot of disinformation that became dominant during the campaign period, and it was these irregularities and anomalies which allowed the likes of Bongbong Marcos to return to power 36 years after his family was ejected from the Philippines.
During the protest, demonstrators raised slogans against the martial law that governed the country between 1972 and 1981 and denounced the crimes of the Marcos family dictatorship.
Votes does not erase what happened during the dark years of martial law. It does not erase the crimes of the dictatorship, the plunder that the Marcos family committed. It only goes to show how deeply problematic our political institutions are, our political system is. And no thanks to social media platforms who did nothing to stop the disinformation from spreading during the last 6 years.
The Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, arrived Thursday in Tehran to meet with the leader of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and with Iranian President Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi. Qatar's Emir Al Thani said, "I have asked Qatari officials to identify the main areas for cooperation between the two countries and to establish the necessary basis for achieving the desirable level of economic relations between the two countries." For his part, Iran seeks to strengthen economic relations, especially regarding oil resources, and support in pushing for a lift of the economic sanctions imposed by the United States, in which Qatar can play an important role. In addition, both parties shared their concern over the murder of Palestinian journalist Shirin Abu Akleh and discussed agreements in view of the celebration of the 2022 World Cup. The Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the United Arab Emirates president, whose modernization policies helped transform his country into a regional powerhouse, died on Friday. The Ministry of Presidential Affairs announced an official mourning and flags to be flown at half-mast for a period of 40 days starting Friday. It also suspended work in ministries, departments, federal and local institutions, and the private sector for 3 days. Sheikh Khalifa's role had been largely ceremonial since he suffered a stroke and underwent surgery in 2014. His brother and Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, has been widely seen as the leader of the United Arab Emirates, handling day-to-day affairs for the Gulf state. Sheikh Khalifa was appointed as the second president of the United Arab Emirates in 2004, succeeding his father and founder of the nation, Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan. We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at Tell Us Through English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Tell Us Through English, I'm Dio Martin. Thank you for watching.